And we are live. Welcome to the UFC 300 preview from the MMA Groupchat. I'm here, Jeremiah, with my friends Noah and my brother Tobey. We're going to break down the entire UFC 300 card for you guys from the first prelim to the main event. Normally we wouldn't do this, but this card is so massive that we can't not. To get us kind of eased into it, though, I have a couple of icebreakers for us to get into quickly before we break down all the fights, as we've got to move pretty quickly with this breakdown. But let's just start it off with the first question. What is your favorite fight of all time? Figured this might be a good question to ask, as this is a landmark card. It kind of makes you think about all the fights you've watched up to this point, the fights that made you fall in love with the sport. Tobey, what's your favorite fight in the UFC of all time?
I'm probably going to have to go UFC 290, Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. I mean, you want to talk about 5 rounds of chaos, pushing the pace the entire time. I mean, crazy shots. They both got dropped. I mean, it was crazy. I would definitely say that one for me.
Yeah, that was a wild fight. I remember sitting there just like, oh my gosh, the flyweights have taken over the UFC. What about you, Noah?
It sucks he just said. I was going to say the exact same thing. I'm not even going to lie. So now I got to think of a new one. But just to preface this, I actually started watching the UFC at UFC 290, so I haven't been watching for too long. So, I mean, other than that fight, though, because I don't want to steal the same one as you did, a fight that I did really like was Hooker versus Poirier. That's a fight that I always think about. Just straight, just
That was crazy.
absolutely nothing
That was
forward. It was
crazy.
awesome. So I would say the Pantoja versus Moreno fight was probably my favorite, but as a close second, I'll give the Hooker versus Poirier fight.
Yeah. Oh. I've got 2. I know that probably is terrible because I asked for 1. But I've got 2. UFC 189, Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2 for the welterweight title of the world. That is the greatest fight I've ever seen. From the opening bell, I think the most iconic scene that I can ever remember from a fight is after round 3. And there's blood. I mean, I think Robbie Lawler's lip is split, and the bell rings for them to go sit in the corners, and they just stand there in the middle of the octagon, and John McCarthy's standing between them, and they're just standing there staring, waiting. Instead of going back to the corners, they're just standing there staring, waiting to beat each other up again. It was the greatest. That was when I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then the other one that comes to mind is just because it probably is the greatest 30 seconds ever to start a fight. It's Diego Sanchez versus Clay Guida when they stand in the center of the octagon and both of them swing at full power for a full 30 seconds straight and neither of them drops. And that might just be like my favorite moment. But yeah, definitely Robbie and Rory 2. And then what's crazy is that was the co-main event on that card. People sometimes forget that Conor versus Mendes was the main event when Conor became a champ for the first time. But the second icebreaker before we go into breaking down the rest of the fights, what's your favorite event? No, I know you haven't been watching as long, but 290 to 300, I guess that gives you 10 events that you've watched in full. I mean, it doesn't have to be a pay-per-view, but what's the event that's most memorable to you in your time watching?
Yes, I would say it's definitely between 290 and 295 for me. 298 was kind of a sleeper as well, but I've got to give it to 290. It's kind of the first pay-per-view. Like, I really knew all the fighters. I've watched some events previously. Of course, I'd watched Conor McGregor fight. I'd watched John Jones fight, the big names. But that was the first time I actually sat down and watched it. And, again, we watched those flyweight guys just go at it in the co-main. And then that was the first time I ever watched Volk, believe it or not, and he absolutely tore it up against Yair Rodriguez. That was an awesome card. I would say UFC 290 on International Fight Week last year was my favorite fight card of all time. So,
Tobey, what you got for us?
It's funny, I took his fight, and he kind of took my card. That was one I was leaning towards, but I guess just ones in recent memory. I don't know, I would say 298 just because of how good the main event was. I mean, it was short, but the card top to bottom, and just seeing Ilya do what he did, I mean, I think we just saw the start of a great championship run. It's hard to deny that. But then from top to bottom, again, really recent, but 299, I mean, great main event, great prelims. The whole card was stacked. Dominant performance from O'Malley, so I'd probably have to say those.
Yeah. I was on my phone because the card that is my favorite of all time was, I don't know if you guys remember, well, I mean, everybody remembers, but the world shut down in 2020, right as March was beginning, and there was no sports, and I didn't know I didn't know what I was going to do for the rest of the year. And then all of a sudden, Dana announces UFC 249 happening in Jacksonville, Florida. No fans, but we're bringing you a pay-per-view. I think that solidified the UFC being like my top sport because, you know, it had been creeping up in my ranks, but I had been involved in watching so many sports for so long. But when Dana said, yeah, we don't care that there's a pandemic. We're fighting. That was amazing. The Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson was the main event.
Poor Tony. Don't go down that path.
No, that fight was masterful. Watching Justin Gaethje, because you have to remember going into that fight, Tony Ferguson was the boogeyman. He was the guy who was scheduled to fight Khabib the month earlier before the world shut down, and then Khabib couldn't leave the country once the pandemic started. And no one expected Gaethje to come in and do that. The co-main was Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz for the bantamweight title. Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstrike. Calvin Kattar was on that card. Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. I mean, the card was loaded. It was amazing. That was that one made me a true fan, as if I wasn't already. But that one reminded me why I loved the game so much. But now, without further ado, let's get into our UFC 300 breakdown. Guys, I think this is the biggest card of all time.
Oh, not even just in UFC, of any combat sport.
I mean, I can't think of any card in history, boxing, MMA, kickboxing, that has been this hyped up, this loaded. So we've got to break down the fights. We're going to need a prediction from each of you. You don't have to give methods, as we're going to talk about props and maybe bold predictions later, but need a prediction, a short breakdown, maybe 30 to 45 seconds, and then we'll keep it rolling as we've got 13 fights to break down. Starting off the breakdown of the fights, Cody Garbrandt, Deiveson Figueiredo. What a curtain jerker. Two former champions, both fighting at bantamweight. Noah, who you got?
So, just as a quick breakdown of the fight, I think that Cody Garbrandt's gonna give up more of a fight than people think he is. He's a huge underdog right now, but like, let's not sleep. Like, Cody Garbrandt could come out and just be the champion Cody Garbrandt out of nowhere. So again, you don't know what version of Cody Garbrandt you're gonna get, but I don't think the people should count him out so quickly. I do think he has a lot left of him, and he could definitely catch him one good time and end the fight. But as for Figueiredo, I think he's going to be pushing forward the entire fight. He's going to be excited to scrap, and I think I got him on a late finish against Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah, I mean, just based off what he was saying, I think Figueiredo, he's excited because he knows at this point in their careers, he's a much more pinpoint striker than Cody, even though that's what Cody's best at right now. I think the scary thing is, even though they were both kind of cans, if Cody has anywhere close to the confidence he had back when he was champ, a confident Cody Garbrandt is one of the best fighters we've ever seen. So I'd love to have, the shuffle, the dance moves, old Cody back, especially for 300. But I personally see Deiveson getting a win by decision.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing will be to see, does Cody's speed play a role in this fight as big as it has in his previous fights? Because at bantamweight, Cody kind of brought in the style of, I'm going to be quicker than you. I'm going to hit you twice before you hit me once. And Cody was starching guys. But when you bring up a flyweight who can throw faster than a bantamweight, just by the nature of him being used to being smaller, and you throw in the fact that he's now got patience too. So not only is he quick, but he's patient about when he throws those quick strikes. I was really impressed with the way he came out and he dismantled Rob Font, which is a better victory than Cody's had in about 4 years. And as good as Cody looked in December versus Kelleher, it's Brian Kelleher, they literally said he would never fight again at the beginning of last year because of the neck injury he sustained. In March of last year, Cody fought Trevin Jones and struggled to take him to decision. Before that, he got knocked out by Kai Kara France. I don't know. The level of competition, if Cody actually fights a guy who's championship caliber at this point in his career, it's kind of interesting to me to see where he levels up with that. I know this is a fight he's amped about, but I just think at this point in their careers, Deiveson is at a level where he's still progressing. He's still becoming more technical. He's still leveling up, so to speak, even though he's a bit older. Cody's been chinned quite a lot, and that's why I have to go with Deiveson Figueiredo. Next up, though, we've got Jim Miller versus Bobby Green, a battle of the OGs. Jim Miller going to to be the only person to win on UFC 100, 200, and 300. Meanwhile, he's got to take on the OG of OGs, Bobby King Green. Tobey, start us off for this one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Green has a huge advantage on the feet. Miller has a huge advantage on the ground. The crazy thing is, the biggest thing I look at in this fight is I don't know if we can look at Bobby Green the same after that last KO loss. Plus with, I mean, probably not for you, Jeremiah, because you've seen a lot more fights, but that's the worst stoppage I've ever seen. I mean, he had 15 unanswered punches. Some probably hit the back of the head. I think Miller's going to go for, a lot of takedowns to start off. I think Bobby will defend him good. I think it'll be standing. I think, unfortunately, I think Bobby wins a close one. But again, it's going to be interesting to see because fighters after a KO, let alone that, what fighter we get. I think it's going to be really close, but I do think Bobby gets it done.
Yeah.
I kind of completely disagree with you. I think that, the story is cool for Jim Miller to be here. He's on 1-2 and now 300. But I think Bobby Green is a nightmare matchup for him. I think Bobby Green's head movement and his distance control is going to be way too much for Jim Miller to keep up with. And Bobby Green's pretty decent at defending the takedown, too. I think he's going to keep the fight on the feet, and I really think that he's going to win this with an early finish, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm actually with Noah. I'm not going to go as far as to say he's going to finish him early because Jim Miller is pretty durable even at this point in his career, even though, he's gotten a little bit more chinny as he's gotten older. But Bobby is just quick. His head movement's great to the point where, people forget, I think, the end of 2022, this guy went to a split decision with Rafael Fiziev. That's how high level of a striker he is on the feet. And I think people really underestimate him on the ground, too. I don't think he's just going to sit there and get beaten up like a lot of people when Jim Miller gets on top. I think Bobby's going to scramble if he gets taken down. And that's if he gets taken down. I think on the feet, Jim Miller, he holds a stance where his arms are so broad in that it looks like his reach is shorter, even though their arms are the same length. But he limits the reach that he has to where he's got to lunge more. I think Bobby clips him in. I think Bobby can dart in and get out before he gets hit. At best, I think Jim can make it a 29-28 loss for himself, but I really think Bobby's just going to be much more technical, and I really think it's going to be evident that Bobby's just got the speed. Even at this point in their career, I think Jim Miller has slowed down to the point where I just don't think he can keep up with the amount of punches that are going to be thrown his way before he can get off what he wants to. But moving on, we've got a banger in women's strawweight. Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Boys, this is a crazy fight. Noah, break it down.
So this fight was really hard to pick because Andrade can be so wishy-washy. Like, she's either going to come out there and she's gonna look absolutely incredible, or it's going to be like a super quick fight. We're going to be like, why was this even on UFC 300? The thing I do think about this fight, though, that is going to be a huge factor is Andrade is a veteran, and she's been in these, obviously not a UFC 300 situation, but she's been in these big situations where all eyes are on her, where actually I think she might have spiked to the favorite now. I was going to say she was the underdog, but I think she might have spiked to the...
Slightly today. She's the favorite on DraftKings.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be really close. It is extremely hard to call. I would completely stay away from betting on this fight altogether, but I'm going to take Andrade by decision. She was going to be one of my favorite underdogs on the entire card, but now she's spiked to a favorite. But again, really, it just depends on what version of Andrade we get, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Tobey, what you got, Andrade or Marina Rodriguez?
Yeah, this was really close too. This might be a little shocking way to look at it, but, we know Andrade for how good her striking's always been in this division. But I actually think at this point in her careers, Marina, I think she's going to win this by her pinpoint striking, keeping range, not being too far in or too far out, like keeping distance really well. I mean, you even look at Andrade getting caught in that last Jan fight. She's not what she used to be. Now, again, we could still see, a performance, of her earlier in her career. But, I mean, you look at the caliber of people both of them have fought. But, I mean, even recently, Marina beat Yan Zhaonan, who's fighting in the co-main event. So, I just think at this point in their career, Marina's striking. I have a going decision, too. But I think she wins just because I think distance control at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've got to go with Jessica Andrade. Marina is going to try and control the range, and I wouldn't be shocked if for the first round and a half she's able to do that. One thing that I've kind of learned as we've been breaking down fights together for the past few weeks is I've started to think in my mind, if the fight goes there, am I instantly worried about who I picked? Can I trust the fighter to be on the feet and on the ground? I can trust Marina to be on the feet, but if the fight goes to the ground, she's terrible. She's absolutely helpless on the ground. Not to mention, she doesn't deal well with power strikers. She got KO'd terribly by Amanda Lemos. I mean, she absolutely starched. So even if she can keep distance for the first round, Andrade has championship experience. She knows how to pace herself, even in a 3-round fight, pretty perfectly, to the point where if it's in a round and a half and she's losing, all she's got to do is change one part of her footwork and land a shot. The whole fight's changed. Andrade has the power to, I mean, there are very few women who can put another woman's lights out. Andrade has power to put any women at any weight out cold. She just, no matter where the fight goes, Andrade can end it. Andrade is superior on the ground, and if it stays on the feet too long and she lands too many power shots, I give her the advantage. So I just can't trust Marina in all the places the fight could go. So that's why I got to go with Andrade. To close, this is crazy to say, but to close out the UFC Fight Pass prelims, Renato Moicano versus Jalen Tarantula Turner. Toby, break it down.
Oh, real quick, Jared, can you do your Moicano impression again? You did it last week, and it was beautiful.
Oh, Money Moicano. Money Moicano.
Sorry, one more time.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes this fight so interesting is, I want to start off by saying I think this fight is a huge mismatch. I think Turner, I mean, he might be one of, if not the best in the division on the feet. His build is crazy, but the crazy thing is, if Moicano can get the back at any time in the fight could end. So I honestly see Turner getting a finish, but again, in the slight chance that Moicano gets him down and gets the back, he might be one of the most dangerous people in the entire UFC once he gets someone down and gets their back. So it's going to be really interesting.
Noah?
This fight it's very interesting because Moicano has become a more polished striker than people give him credit for. So with that being said, though, Jalen Turner is a sniper of a striker, and of course, I mean, the dude. How does he make lightweight as tall as he is? It's absolutely insane. But I don't know if he's going to be able to stand with Turner, and I don't think he's going to be able to take Turner down either. I think Turner's takedown defense is great, and I could even see a world where Turner gets us on the ground and knocks him out by TKO. I feel like it's a matchup nightmare for Moicano. I think he's a beast, but I mean, what's his nickname? The Tarantula or something like that. I mean, that's a perfect nickname for him. I don't see how Moicano is going to win this fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with both of you on this one. This is not the first time you're going to hear me say this on this card, but I think we're being captivated by personality more than skill when we get captivated by wanting to pick a guy like Moicano. Moicano's BJJ is really good.
Oh, it's elite.
But he can't get you to the ground very well. There's a difference between a guy whose BJJ is really good and a guy who's got great takedowns and great BJJ. You can have the best BJJ that you want, but if you can't get a guy to the ground, it's pretty useless. And Moicano's just not the slickest with trying to take you down. We even saw that in the Drew Dober fight a couple months ago when he was going in for takedowns. Drew Dober nearly ended that fight. And even like you were saying, Noah, Drew Dober almost ended that fight by ground and pound multiple times. How much more does a 185 or cut into 155 going to have a huge strength and power advantage? And he's really not too shabby when it gets to the ground either. He's polished enough to survive against a guy like Moicano, and on the feet, it's no match. I mean, if Turner hits him, and Moicano's hittable. That's the thing. It's not like Moicano is great at BJJ and polished somewhat. He's not very polished at all on the feet. I think Turner starches him. But to start the prelims, this is crazy. Every time I say that, for the fact that I basically just gave us a UFC fight night at the Apex card.
You give us 4
I gave you a. But let's start the prelims, which start at 8 p.m. on ESPN. We've got Super Sadiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopez. This fight is crazy. I'm going to say that a lot. This fight's crazy. Noah, who you got?
I'm so glad I could start with this one, because this is literally, I think this might be one of the best fights on the entire card. Yeah. You've got the up-and-comer Lopez, and then you've got Sadiq Yusuff, who's been holding it down in the division for so long. So I think this is going to be very interesting. I think Lopez is a very high-level jiu-jitsu, and he's got some solid hands too. Yusuf, I'm actually very surprised he's not the favorite in this fight because, I mean, again, he has held it down for so long, but I think it's kind of what you said earlier. It's just like the fighter is more likable, I guess, when it comes to Lopez. I think people want to see him jump up into the top 15, so maybe that's why he's favored at this current moment. I think it's going to be a crazy close fight. I think that if it does go to decision, I think Yusuf gets this win. I honestly don't see a world where Lopez wins it by decision. Maybe he can completely prove me wrong. But if it goes to decision, I like Yusuf. But I think Lopez is going to get a finish in this fight. And again, it's really hard to call it one way or the other. I think it really does depend on whether Lopez can get a finish or not. So,
yeah, I think this does have the potential to be one of the best fights on the entire card. I think the thing that really made me lean Lopez in this fight is Yusuf. They're both very well-rounded, but I think when it comes to getting someone out in a finish, Lopez is so dangerous on the ground and on the feet. I mean, you look at his last, finish on the feet, but if he gets it on the ground too, I actually significantly, go Lopez in that aspect of it. But, if it goes decision, like you said, Noah, I could see Yusuf pulling it out. But I honestly, when you talk about props to look at, Lopez by submission, like, I think that's a really dangerous thing to look at.
Yeah. Y'all hear that? I hear the dog barking. The underdog. I got to go Sadiq Yusuf here. The boxing, as great as Lopez has looked, let's not forget he beat Gavin Tucker and Pat Sabatini in his last two fights. Now they're jumping him to a bona fide top 15 guy who just went to war with Edson Barboza. And I think learned an important thing is you've got to learn how to pace yourself. He went into that fight after not having fought for about a year and kind of gassed himself out trying to finish Edson. Now it's a 3-round fight. So that power we saw in those first 2 rounds against Edson's going to be live. And I think Diego has got great hands, like you said, but he's not technical on the feet. It's more looping, and he tries to catch you with looping and then try to somehow wrap up that submission really quickly. But Sadiq's boxing is crazy, and he's got legit power. And honestly, Diego, I can't think of a fight from this streak where he's actually manhandled someone to the ground and then submit them. Think about it. He's been taken down. He was taken down by Movsar and then almost won the fight. Gavin got him down, and then he submitted Gavin after getting taken down. And then Sabatini didn't even go to the ground. So there's not a fight on this big win streak where he's actually taken someone down. So if Sadiq just says, I want to keep it standing, I don't see how Diego's going to force him to. I mean, I've never really seen Sadiq get taken to the ground by force. And if it stays boxing, I think people are really underestimating how sharp Sadiq is. So I've got to go Sadiq Yusuf. I think to get Sadiq Yusuf as an underdog against an unranked fighter, as popular as Lopez is, a ranked fighter as an underdog against an unranked fighter, I feel like you have to take it.
And Sadiq's in his prime too, which is great. And it's not even odds or anything. Like,
no, it's plus money.
Right,
I mean, and even if. And I kind of agree. I lean with you, Noah, that it goes towards decision. The prop on KO or decision on that has got to be like plus 400, I'm sure. I mean, at least because he's the underdog, and then you're throwing in how you think he's going to win. I don't see. I mean, even if you lose, how do you not take the risk on that if you're betting? Yeah. I mean, to me, there are some risks that are like, that's a smart risk. That's one I wouldn't hate you on. And you could hedge if it gets to round 2, you live bet. You hedge on something that you see is most likely, and then you kind of break even. But yeah, I don't see how you don't take an early dog shot on that fight.
I think it's crazy that he is. This was a really hard fight to pick. So I think that you're exactly right when it comes to if you are a gambler and you're willing to take a risk, like you can't be mad even if it doesn't hit. Like that's crazy value on a guy like Sadiq Yusuf.
Oh yeah, I mean, and remember, Sadiq is what we were. When we think of Diego, that was our Sadiq a few years ago. And I just feel like this is going to be one of those y'all must have forgot who I am moments. Going to war for 5 rounds with Edson Barboza, that experience is invaluable. Who has Diego done that with? I mean, if Diego's going to win, he's going to have to assert. I'm having trouble seeing Diego asserting himself to the point where he dominates Sadiq in any area of the fight if he can't get it to the ground. But nonetheless, we move forward. Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter, taking on Kayla Harrison. What do you think, Tobey?
This was a harder fight for me to pick, which is shocking, especially if you look at the odds. But it honestly came down to this. right? I think Holly Holm, not even just in women fighters. I think she's one of the best. Her and her coaches, she has some of the best game plans for fights. You know, even with the recent loss to Bueno Silva.
Not a loss.
Oh well, overturned because Silva was on. But I will say, what broke it down for me is, even though Kayla's coming in huge, honestly, after the cut, she looks huge. The level of competition is scaring me. This is a huge moment for her. She couldn't finish Aspen Ladd in her last fight. And you look at someone like Holm, I think Holm's going to come with a game plan. It's going to be hard to keep it on the feet with Kayla's build, but I think she will defend a lot of takedowns. I mean, you think back, just to talk about Holly Holm, the last time she was this big of an underdog, she shocked the world and knocked out Ronda Rousey. Now, that was a long time ago, but you look at the way she game plans, I could honestly see the moment kind of get into Kayla's head because, again, her last two fights, a loss and then Ladd's a decision. I think the dogs are barking again. I think Holm has the build, the game plan to do it. I think Holm wins by decision. I do.
Who let that guy cook right there? Okay, so I like that breakdown. That's, so I will say, Holm is really surprising that she's this much of an underdog to me. Definitely she deserves to be an underdog, but to be this much of an underdog is crazy for me. Because, she's got great range. She's a seasoned veteran. She's been in these big moments in the UFC before, whereas, this is Harrison's UFC debut, and it's on the biggest card of all time. So, we've seen her in big fights, but we've never seen her in this level of a fight. Even if it's not a championship fight or anything, I still think it's a huge, huge fight that she's never been a part of before. Holm's got good takedown defense. Now, we do have to remember that Harrison's an Olympic-level wrestler, so is that going to matter? I guess we'll have to find out, but Holm does have good takedown defense, which could work in her favor. I will say, I think that she needs to stay measured. She shouldn't let herself go loose, and she needs to win this fight by decision. I don't think she's knocking out Harrison, just because Harrison's massive. I don't think that you're going to be able to throw a punch that's going to knock her out. But with Harrison being so massive, she's had this huge weight cut. So all these things are things to look out for. But again, I will say, I think every single one of those things need to go right for Holm to have a chance of winning this fight. And so with that being said, I think that Harrison wins this fight. I'm, again, very surprised the odds are this lofty, and I'm not going to be super shocked if Holm goes out there and actually wins this fight. But again, I think a lot would need to happen for Harrison to lose her UFC debut because, she's the real deal.
She is massive. And one more thing I want to add before you give your thoughts, Jeremiah. I think all of us are hoping for at least a great fight, no matter who wins, because I don't think it's that hard to say. Women's bantamweight is the most uninteresting division in the entire UFC right now. That title fight was horrible. And honestly, Holm would have to have a crazy performance, but Kayla wins, she probably gets the next title shot after Pena, So I just hope for a great fight because women's bantamweight is not entertaining right now.
We need something for sure. I would love to see Pena versus Harrison at some point for the title. I think that would be fireworks. But yeah, you're right. We need something.
Yeah, I don't think this fight's close at all. I'm gonna have to disagree with both of you on that point. I haven't seen anything from Holly in the past 2 years that gives me any reason to believe she's gonna come out and have enough power because she hasn't shown any power. Her last win against Diana Santos last March, she grappled. She won that fight by wrestling. She's not going to do that this fight. And then she faced a grappler who she would have the clear striking advantage over in July. PEDs or not, she got choked out. Kayla's a different beast. I think people forget she's a 2-time gold medalist, not only an Olympian, 2-time gold medalist. In regards to the concerns about, her fight versus Aspen Ladd she didn't look great. She hadn't fought in 365 days. There's something to be said for the fact that in the PFL, if you're not in the regular season tournament, they didn't have the pay-per-view structure set up yet for her to be continually fighting. Not to mention, she's won that tournament twice. So what's the level of motivation when it feels like an easy win every year? How easy would it be to underestimate someone? I don't think she's underestimating that at all. The biggest question for me is the weight cut. How does she look at 135? And I guess we'll find out in the morning what she looks like when she steps on the scale. If she makes weight, though, she's going to put on a lot more than Holly does. And come Saturday night, because the fight's not after the weigh-in. The fight is on Saturday night. she's probably going to be 160 pounds in the cage. I think Holly might stuff a takedown or two, but once Kayla gets it to the ground, this fight stays on the ground. I've got Kayla in a runaway. I wouldn't bet on it. The odds are too wide. If you're going to bet, I'd say go on method of victory. Maybe do a double chance submission or decision. And it's also not, I know I'm going long, but I've been a fan of Kayla for a long time, so I'm hyped for this. Let's not forget that in the PFL, elbows are banned. So when you're seeing Kayla on the ground in the PFL, you have to realize the main weapon she'd want to use is taken away from her.
Yeah.
On Saturday night, she can throw elbows. Can you imagine Kayla? Kayla, as dominant as she's been, 15-1 in her pro MMA record, and you throw in elbows now?
No, that'll be interesting to see because, again, obviously that had to have been a big, focal point of training camp, but not using that basically at all in most of her professional career. It'll be interesting to see if she forgets to incorporate because, again, I know now that they're legal, it's a huge part of getting her on the ground, but not doing that in any of your major fights. It'll be interesting to see how much they incorporated that in her training camp.
I wouldn't hate on you if you took her by finish because as soon as she's in side control, I think elbows are going straight to the forehead. And Holly's 10 years older than Kayla.
Yeah.
And we think of Kayla as coming in a little late in her career. Holly's 10 years older. And again, like I said, we do this with people we love, with names we love, and we don't really evaluate their career where they're at. At what point in the last 3 years have you guys been impressed with a Holly Holm performance?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest. She's a bona fide Hall of Famer. She's a world champion. She has that forever. But when have you come away from watching a pay-per-view or a fight night and said, wow, Holly Holm should fight for the belt?
Well, let me say this. Dana White is an absolute jerk with how he does this because he's a genius because he's got this big bantamweight star that has won a title before. And they're like, let's throw this new star that we want to market. Let's let her absolutely destroy her.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a jerk move to Holly, but it's a genius move to market Kayla Harrison.
Well, plus he had to do something after that title fight. I mean, there's no one. I mean, even Pena, he had to make a big splash. Kayla's the perfect person.
Well, who else would you put her against on 300?
Yeah.
You want to introduce the big star on 300, but it's not like people are going to get hyped if you say Kayla Harrison versus Caitlin Vieira. It's like, 300?
Well, casuals are also just very much like that in a sort of announcement. They're going to be like, okay.
Which,
cool.
Honestly, I think that's a better fight. Kayla versus Caitlin Vieira.
It would be.
That's a much better fight.
Yeah.
Or what they could have done is, we'll get to this later, but they could have put Kayla on the main card for a number one contenders fight versus Juliana Pena. That would have been because Rocky's not in a rush to fight. She's gonna drain this title win for as long as she can because
she knows it's gone.
It's gone as soon as she fights again.
I mean, we'll get to it. But I would much rather see that fight than Bo Nickel versus.
You don't think if they offered Juliana Pena the bag that fight doesn't happen on 300?
It would, but would you really? Because again, I think those two could fight for a championship. So do you want to waste it on a number one contender fight, or do you want to use it on a championship?
Plus Pena, she has the title shot lined up. I don't know.
I think so too.
I just think it's. I think you have a line that's plus 100 minus 100. I think it's a closer fight.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not extremely excited for this fight. And again, this is one of those fight cards where if the person I pick loses, the person I probably want to win wins. I love Holly. But I don't know. I mean, I think Kayla will take care of business. We'll say that. But moving on to not even the feature prelim yet. Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain, the Funkmaster Sterling in his featherweight debut. This is a interesting
crazy
fight. Tobey,
really
where are
is.
you leaning on this one? A contrast of styles, if there ever was one.
Well, especially after breaking it down, it legitimately is crazy to think that we're not even at the feature prelim. Like, this card's actually going to be insane.
I will say people are crazy for saying this card they didn't do well with it.
Oh, yeah.
I could see how people would have maybe wanted more at the top of it, but like it's an awesome card.
Even the top of it, though, like the match, I think they did a really good job with it. But again, it is high standards for 300. I understand a little bit, but I think this is not only a really interesting fight, but kind of perfect for Sterling if he wants to transition to this division because he runs into a lot of the same problems he ran into on paper with the O'Malley fight. And I think the big difference in this fight is, again, Kattar has the edge on striking. Kattar has way better takedown defense versus O'Malley. We didn't really see how that played out. I think the big difference and the reason why I lean Sterling in this fight is because you could tell that Sterling wanted to prove something in that O'Malley fight. He went completely against what he's good at. He tried to strike with him, and I mean, we saw a couple pay-per-views ago, you don't try and strike with Sean O'Malley. And honestly, not even besides Bo Nickel, even considering him, I think Aljamain Sterling is the best wrestler in the UFC. Really close to Nickel as just a pure wrestler, getting him down. I do think he ends up getting him down. Again, it's a really interesting fight because, again, Kattar is so much better on the feet. I don't even know how much of a threat Sterling will pose because, I mean, you look at his title run, he didn't even really have to fight Dillashaw, with that shoulder injury. So it's interesting, but I think the wrestling, and I think Sterling has something to prove, and I think he gets it done.
No.
I'm kind of with Tobey on this one. It's a really interesting fight. And I kind of agree with him on the fact that this could be O'Malley all over again because Kattar's such a good striker, and he could absolutely catch Aljamain on his way in. But after that O'Malley loss, I think Aljamain's going to be a lot safer. He's not going to be going he's not going to open up or make crazy lunges. He's going to be a lot safer with his takedowns and with his throws. And I think that's really going to save him in this fight because I think the same thing could happen as what happened against O'Malley. And I will say, Kattar absolutely could catch him on the way in. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm just saying he's not going to be so careless to let it happen. And I agree. I think he wanted to prove something against O'Malley. And now that it's happened, I think he's going to have his eyes woken up a little bit. And again, Kattar has a really weird boxing style too, which I think could play against Sterling. I think it's going to be a really interesting fight. But, I mean, he's easily going to out-wrestle Kattar. Kattar has some decent takedown defense, but it's not going to be decent against Aljamain Sterling. I think Aljamain Sterling is going to get him down fairly easily, and he's going to hold him down. And he's also I don't think he's going to stay in the pocket either. I think he's very much so just going to try to get this fight to the ground. He's not going to get too cute with it. He's going to try to do what he does best and just out-wrestle him. So I think this is another hard fight to call. I think it could be a blowout one way or the other, to be honest, which is why I think it's hard. But I just think Sterling is so much better. He's so much more skilled, and I think that wrestling is really going to carry him to a victory. And he looks good as a featherweight too. Like if y'all haven't seen a picture of him, like he looks like that's where he should have been all along.
Yeah.
He looks good as a featherweight. So again, I think Sterling's going to play it safer than he did in the O'Malley fight. He's not going to take some unnecessary risks where he's going to get caught, and I think he's going to win this fight.
Yeah, just one quick thing before you go, Jeremiah. I thought it was really sad, and I know a lot of people don't view it this way. Not only just all the undeserved hate he got, but the fact that Sterling didn't get an automatic rematch. I know he was finished early. He went on the biggest run in the bantamweight division's history, and there are some questions about who he fought during that run and like how the fights went, but I just think it's sad to see him leave the division like he did and not getting an automatic fight because, I mean, what is someone going to have to do in a division like that? I mean, he basically ran through the top of it, and not getting an automatic rematch. I just thought it was weird.
Yeah. The circumstances were weird, but I think we've gotten so used to automatic rematches that we forget that that's not really how it's designed to be. You're designed to fight for the belt, and if you lose, you've got to build yourself up again and prove that you're meant to be in the title fight. Automatic rematches should be for absolute wars. That wasn't an absolute war. That was an absolute beatdown. So yeah. I wasn't mad that there was a break in between. Now, if he wanted to come back and fight someone else and then prove that he was ready for that, but you also have to take into consideration the fact that he wants Merab to fight for the title too. So I think that played into it. I think he was going on his streak, and then once he lost, knew he was going to go up so that Merab could take over the division, and we'll see if that happens.
I think it also helps too. The UFC wants to market Sean O'Malley so much. To be honest, I think O'Malley would have lost in a rematch because, again, I don't think Aljamain gets caught if they fight again. I think that he plays it a lot safer, and O'Malley wouldn't be able to get up if he gets brought down. So I think that's also partially what could go into it as well. Maybe,
but Aljo was so sucked out at 135, especially seeing him at 145 right now with less fluid on his brain. If O'Malley lands a couple of hard shots, how does he handle that? And O'Malley was hurt in that fight too. O'Malley went into the fight hurt and still didn't get taken down. I don't know. That would be an interesting rematch to kind of go back for, but I think you can tell now that we look back on it, now that we have this vantage point, that weight cut was killing Sterling. I mean, that was a slow death cutting, because at some points during his camp, I think he said he was 186, 185, going to 135. This cut makes a lot more sense for him to go to 145. As far as this fight goes, though, it's going to be interesting. Calvin has clearly got the better striking, the better boxing. The difference between him and O'Malley, though, is that he is not as quick as O'Malley. His strikes are a little bit slower, and I think that little switch up in speed is going to help Sterling evade a little bit more easy. Also, while Calvin has a great takedown defense statistically, how much has he really been tested? I can't remember too many Calvin Kattar fights where he's been like extremely tested to get him to the ground. And we also have to remember Calvin's last fight, the injury on the knee that kind of forced him out of his main event with Arnold Allen. This is his first fight back. This is kind of a theme on this card where guys have injured a knee in a big fight in round 2 or 3 and now are coming back for the first time. You know, how is he going to be able, how quickly can Calvin get into a striking rhythm? It's easy to get into your rhythm when you're not fighting someone who's trying to take your head off in practice. And how easy is it to defend a real takedown where the guy's not training you to defend it, where the guy's actually trying to take you down? Those are some big questions I have, and I just don't know how Calvin's going to deal with the pressure. And let's not forget, Sterling was a world champ. So this is a 3-round fight, his first one in a while. He's going to be able to go for it gas tank wise, I think. I think he'll be able to take a shot if he needs to. I have Sterling pulling this one out. And I think we finally made it to the feature prelim of the night, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. What a fight. What huge stakes for the light heavyweight division. The light heavyweight division is kind of on showcase tonight. It is headlining the prelims and headlining the pay-per-view. So Prochazka, Rakic, most likely the winner is next in line either for the title or a number 1 contenders fight. Tobey, who do you got? Tell me.
This is actually not only I don't want to say it's overlooked, but me personally, this is near the top of my list of ones I'm most excited for because I kind of did a little bit of a deep dive on Rakic because, I mean, you look at how he was fighting before the freak injury. You look at him in the UFC, and most people were thinking the way he was fighting, he might have been the best light heavyweight in the world. The freak injury versus Jan, I think he was winning that fight before that. And his only other loss, I mean, a horrible judging, versus Ozdemir. I think he won that fight, but you take it, into consideration just the way he was fighting. I pretty heavily favor him versus Yuri. Now that's crazy because I know Yuri's really good, but Yuri, and again, this is what's made him so much fun to watch. Yuri puts himself in a lot of bad spots to land some big shots, and I think Rakic will take advantage of that. I think he has the power advantage in this one. The big thing, obviously, is going to be how is he after injury. Yuri looked great after injury. I think he was winning the Pereira fight before he got finished. It was close. But how is Rakic after injury? How's his movement? What kind of positions will Yuri put himself into to land a big shot? I don't know. I think Rakic wins, and I think he wins by finish, and it's something to look at for the winner of the main event, too, to see who they have to fight next. So,
yeah, I think man, it's such a tough fight. I know I've said that about like 8 fights on this card. I mean, there's so many good fights, but I think the fact that a former light heavyweight champion who just had a title fight is an underdog is crazy to me. And I think the weird style is really going to be a lot for Rakic to handle. I think Rakic, he absolutely has the potential to be a champion in this division. And I think if he wins this fight, he gets Ankalaev for number 1 contender, and the winner of that gets the winner of Hill versus Pereira, unless obviously if it's a good enough fight to do a rematch. But man, this is really hard because I don't think Prochazka is going to win another title in this division, but I think he's going to beat Rakic. I don't know if I have any real reason to say that because Rakic might be a better fighter at this point in time. He's the real deal. He's the favorite in this fight, but it's just I have a hard time. I think the style of Prochazka, just the weird style, is going to get him a win in this fight.
Sorry, I hear it again. The dog is barking.
Yes, sir.
Guys, let's go over this. The former champ of the division is the underdog to a guy who hasn't fought in a year and a half. As far as breaking it down, I see reason for Prochazka to win this as well. Rakic is very technical, but he plays it safe. That's kind of his MO. He's going to strike from the outside, and when he sees an opportune time to get a takedown, that's when he goes for it, and he'll try to control you from the top position. Yuri, while he does leave himself out there, he does leave his leg out there to be chopped. He leaves his face out there to be knocked out. He's even said before that he does not remember fights that he's won because he's actually been knocked out on the feet, just still swinging, and he ends up knocking guys out. But for me, if the fights are never clean the way you want them to be. If you go into a fight thinking, I'm going to keep this really clean against this guy and keep this a very technical fight, what if the fight gets dirty? What if the fight gets to a place where you have to do some unorthodox things in order to win? The person who I've seen do that time after time after time is Yuri Prochazka. Yuri Prochazka has been fighting 5-round fights for a longer time. And I think the fight in November was more Yuri coming off an injury, not really figuring out the flow of his movement. I think even if Rakic hits him, and, by all means, Rakic could put him out. I think Yuri's on a mission. I think Yuri puts Rakic lights out. And I also have big questions, again, about the knee. How does he look for the first time against a guy who's, this is not just like any sporting event. Yuri Prochazka is trying to kill him. Yuri Prochazka, I think Yuri Prochazka legitimately thinks he's also a samurai.
Oh, he does.
So
you gotta think because Rakic called him a fake samurai.
The only way Yuri loses a fight is if he's out. Like, if he's not out, he's swinging for your. I mean, Rakic. This is a tough fight to come back to, and I just think if the fight has to get messy, Yuri Prochazka is gonna have all the tools that he needs, and I think again, I don't understand how Yuri's an underdog. If maybe I look at the fight differently if Rakic is the plus 105 underdog, and then you're looking at it like, oh, the more technical guy, oh, the guy who can go for the takedown. But maybe it's the odds that are changing my viewpoint. But how do you have a former champ who has fought since his injury coming into a fight as an underdog against a guy who hasn't fought in a year and a half and who was getting clipped versus Jan Blachowicz? I don't know. I got to go with Yuri on this one. I think he's going to win this one. Now to the one where Tobey, I'm waiting for you to throw out your dog lock finally for the set of fights for this next one. But this one's opening up the pay-per-view to the chagrin of many. But Cody Brundage versus Bo Nickel opening up the main card of UFC 300. Tobey, who do you have? I'm disappointed I have to ask that, but sometimes I never know with you.
I've been known to sometimes say outlandish things, but I think we might be able to agree on this. Cody Brundage not only should not be on the main card of UFC 300, not only should not be on UFC 300, Cody Brundage should not be in the UFC right now. This is
a crazy thing to say.
This is a whole. I don't even want to talk about his prior fights. No one wants to talk about Cody Brundage. This is a very easy fight to look at. Bo Nickel, submission, round 1. This is going to be a quick fight. Everyone's going to see Bo Nickel's talent, which we definitely haven't seen in his 2 cupcake fights before. Would have loved to actually see a top 15 fighter he get. Would have been a lot more interesting. I know Dana wants to push him. That's all I got. It's a very uninteresting fight to start off the main card, but probably the only fight on the card that's just a little weak in my opinion.
Wait. Do I hear some dogs barking? I'm just kidding. I think Bo Nickel's going to starch him, to be honest with you. I think that he's the real deal. I don't think that the hype is fake. I think he really is the real deal. He's one of the best wrestlers in the entire UFC, if not the best wrestler. He's got the jiu-jitsu to back it. He's got some hands on him, too. He's explosive. He's fun to watch. I'm really excited to see him fight, actually. I do wish they gave him a top 15 fighter, and they really showed, to the diehard MMA fans, because the casuals are going to sit there and be like, whoa, which is kind of Dana White's plan here. But I kind of wish they gave him a top 15 guy, so us diehards can be like, wow, he is really ready to take a huge jump in this division. But again, he's the real deal. I think that his submission odds are a minus 160 or something like that. I actually like his odds to get a KO at 1 plus 170 or something like that. I think it's going to be a quick fight. First or second round, but I think that he's going to absolutely starch him. It's going to be a good bathroom break at the start of the
game. I don't hate the placement of the fight as much as other people do. I do think Yuri versus Rakic is probably a crazy opener to the card. But at the same time, I see what they're doing. They're building a superstar. Bo, the way he's headed, the way he's looked, is a superstar. To your point, Tobey, I don't know how much we can really judge that based off who he's fought. I think Jamie Pickett's a legit win. We just saw him fight Eric Anders in his retirement fight. He's not great, but he's a guy that, up-and-comers should have to go through at that stage in their career. Val was on short notice. He was supposed to fight Trayshawn Gore, which would have been a bit of a tougher fight. The one thing that gives me pause about this fight is that no human being should be a minus 2,500 favorite in a fist fight. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how skilled you are. I don't care how many years you've been fighting. If you're in the UFC fighting against another person who has been training to fight you, there is no planet on which you should be a minus 2,500 fighter. I agree he should be favored. He's definitely my pick to win the fight. But would I be shocked if Brundage goes out there and decides to swing and maybe connects and maybe knocks Bo's lights out in the first round? No, I wouldn't be shocked at that because Brundage has been fighting in the UFC for years. And Brundage is also a college wrestler who had major success, who has just disappointed us in his time thus far. People forget, he wasn't fighting the greatest competition at UFC Austin, but he knocked out a guy by slamming him from, he was locked in an armbar and he knocked a guy flat out cold. I'm not saying by any means that Nickel's going to lose the fight, but I'm just saying minus 25 is too wide. If I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to give you betting advice, I'd throw half a unit on Brundage round one. Half a unit, man. Whatever your unit is, throw half just for the sake of this. If it doesn't hit, you know it's not going to hit, and you can play it off saying it wasn't going to hit. But if he's going to win the fight, it's in round one. This is huge. The first fight on a pay-per-view main card, and how many times have we sat here and been like, oh my goodness, did that just happen?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's not the craziest thing in the world that, especially as you were saying, Noah, you said Nickel round one or round two. We've never seen Bo in round two.
Yeah.
And every fight starts on the feet. And Bo's never been hit with a punch in the UFC as of yet. Do we really think that Cody's not going to throw one shot?
He's going to connect.
Well, yeah.
Connect.
Okay, so and if he connects, how does Bo react?
Plus, he chose to strike with Val, which would be that's the only thing that I'm scared about.
Is if he wants to showcase his striking,
which is what he might. And here's the crazy thing: you're talking about half a unit. Jeremiah bets not like normal people. Do not bet half a unit on this. Maybe $5, but again, first round finish in any fashion.
I love that you clarified that.
First round finish for Cody Brundage is plus 3,500. So even $1
wins $350 if he somehow pulls it off.
Is it
right?
$350 or is it $3,500?
No, 3,500.
No,
Right?
it would still be $35.
Oh,
but yeah, you put 10 on
$10. Yes, that's what I meant.
No, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't understand how any human being can be a minus 2,500.
I don't know about 2,500.
We didn't. How much was what is it? Amanda Nunes was favored minus 1,100 versus Juliana Pena.
We saw how that panned out.
I'm just saying. It's crazy. It's a fight.
Yeah.
Are we just assuming that he's not going to fight back? I agree that Cody Brundage is going to lose the fight. I'm picking Bo Nickel to win. I agree with the KO pick. I don't think he'll sub him because Brundage is an experienced wrestler. But I feel like the line is assuming that Brundage is just going to stand there and take a beating like he's getting paid to give up the fight. I
wouldn't put it past Dana.
Am I crazy and also he's got a pretty good coach. I forget what team he's out of, but Brundage, that team's no joke. That the team that he trains with Chris Gutierrez and Jonathan Martinez. Yeah. Like his gym is I don't know. It's weird to me. And I hate when a line comes out like that and then everyone just kind of
plus it is really rare to see just a line. You rarely even see a minus 1,000. Like it definitely is interesting.
Yeah, and again, it's a fist fight.
Yeah.
I agree he should be heavily favored, but minus 2,500. That to me that removes all chance of betting or adding him to anything.
Oh yeah.
I even would be hesitant to add any prop from that fight because the line is so chalky.
Yeah.
So it feels like a rat line to me. And if the fight goes over, like you pointed out earlier in the breakdown of the card, Toby, the judges we have suck.
Well, one thing we
But he's
do.
gonna hold him down the whole round.
yeah.
But
Potentially.
I'm staying quiet during this conversation because I completely disagree with y'all. I think Bo Nickel deserves to be a minus 2,500. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. I'm not saying. I'm
I
saying
agree
I
he
don't
deserves to
think.
be a
I don't
big
think any
favorite.
human being deserves to be a
yeah.
minus 2,500 favorite in a fist fight.
Here's the thing though, if you're a sports book and you know almost for certain somebody's gonna win, why are you gonna let people profit off of it?
Yeah, but minus 20. I mean, I agree.
Unless
And you realize how much money sports books are gonna make because people are doing what you're saying. They're putting a good bit of money on Brundage, thinking, it's just a YOLO. If it hits, I'm gonna make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And then Nickel's gonna win like he's going to anyways, and they've just made a ton of money off of it.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a sports book expert or anything. But.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying we didn't even favor Adesanya versus Strickland that much. And going into that fight, remember kind of our thoughts before that fight. It's like, yeah, he should probably be minus 1,000 because there's no chance, right?
I just think the main difference between that though is like a champ versus someone down in the top 10 versus like a huge possible prospect versus someone almost on the way out of the
A huge
UFC.
possible prospect who's never been tested.
It's true.
And
I don't know.
Brundage, too, as hard as his fights have been to watch at points in the UFC, he's fought in the UFC for years.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying it's something feels odd to me about it. But with all that being said, I got Nickel round one.
After we spent 10 minutes on the biggest blowout on the card.
I just with all that being said, I'm just saying it feels weird.
Yeah.
It just feels weird. But anyway, we've got to move on to the fourth fight on the pay-per-view because this fight is
It's the fight of the night right here.
this right here is the one I'm most looking forward to. Charles Dubronx Oliveira versus Arman Sarukian in what should be the number one contender fight, what might not end up being the number one contender fight just because of what's going to happen 45 minutes later. But, Toby, what do you think? Charles, does Dubronx pull it out, or does Sarukian, continue his role?
Yeah, Oliveira definitely a fan favorite, a favorite of mine. It's interesting because I think Arman's a horrible matchup for him, but it's interesting because I don't even remember. It's something Silva. It's who Arman fought a couple of fights ago. Joaquim Silva. He got rocked, and that's scary to look at because Oliveira's power is much better than that, and Arman does leave himself openings. But if it's not a huge punch that Arman gets hit with, I think I could see him getting him to the ground, and not many people have done this, but I could see him controlling him on the ground. I don't know. It's really interesting because, again, Oliveira versus Makhachev is not what we're typically seeing. He's usually very active on his back. He got rocked in the last one. I don't really see Arman putting him down with a punch, and then I could see it being more of a takedown. But again, I think on the flip side, if you look at that Joaquim Silva fight, that fight should have ended. Silva just did no submission attempt, no anything. Oliveira, if he hits him with anything that slightly wobbles him, his pressure, he's going to go for the finish. So this is honestly one of the biggest coin flips on the whole card. I lean Oliveira because of the experience, so I'd probably go Oliveira decision. But I think matchup-wise, I mean, this is really interesting. I'd probably go Oliveira, though.
You must have heard the dogs barking again then. Yeah, this is a crazy fight, and this is so hard to predict because I really think that if this fight stays on the feet, I think Arman is going to destroy Oliveira.
Interesting.
I think that he's got a lot more pop in his hands than Oliveira does. But Oliveira's going to be putting that pressure on him the whole time. And here's what Arman has to do if he's going to win this fight. He needs to – I just did a sketch right there. He needs to not – when he's getting pressured by Oliveira, because it's going to happen. Oliveira's just going to press forward and he's going to pressure him. Arman needs to not take him down because his first instinct his entire career, and it's a good instinct to have, is when I'm getting pressured, I'm going to take him down. And he's very good at taking opponents down. And when he gets on the ground, he's better on the ground than he is on the feet. But I don't think he has a chance of losing the fight on the feet, to be honest with you. I think he loses the fight if it goes to the ground. And I think Arman is going to have more pop to him than I think Charles is going to have. And I also think Charles is really going to try to bait him onto the ground as well. I think that Arman is going to go – I don't know why that made me laugh. I think Arman is going to get him on the ground, though, at some point, whether it's by knocking him down, or if Charles pulls guard or whatever, I think that Charles is going to try to bait him onto the ground, and Arman has to stay strong and stay on his feet and say, no, we're going to do this standing up, because I really do think if he goes to the ground, Charles could catch him in a submission. And I'm going to say this right now. I said it the same way with Lopez. I think that Charles needs a finish. I think if this fight goes the distance, I think it's Arman's fight. I think Charles needs a finish. I think he's got to get him caught into a submission. So if Arman can stay on the feet, he can stay disciplined with his takedowns, and he doesn't get baited into it, I've got Arman in this fight. But, man, this fight could really go either way.
Yeah, I said earlier in our breakdown that this theme would continually come up when we're breaking down this card, and as we're watching the card. There are people on this card who we love, who have showed up for us night in and night out, year after year, championship fight after championship fight, but that stylistically and skill-wise are outmatched. And I feel that way. I mean, we can pull up the receipts. After the Austin card in December, I said book Makhachev versus Sarukian.
You did?
I said,
yeah.
That's next. I think this is a statement victory. I think, honestly, as I hear what you're saying about Sarukian needs to stay strong and not go to the ground, I don't think he has to be afraid of going to the ground with Oliveira. I think Sarukian knows how to stay away from a submission. I don't think he's stupid. And I also think, Makhachev, if Makhachev could bully him to the ground, I think Sarukian is Makhachev 2.0 in the sense where he'll just stay tight, he'll stay in the guard, and then he'll posture up, and he'll land elbows if they get into it. And Oliveira's not going to want to be on the ground. I don't think Oliveira's going to take down Sarukian, and if he does, it'll get reversed. I agree with you completely. If it's on the feet, there's one that Sarukian can put his lights out. Oliveira's sharp, but the guys he's fought, he has had an advantage over looking back at it. Poirier, he's definitely more technical than Poirier. Chandler could get knocked out by just about anybody in the top 5 with how sloppy he is. And all I'm saying is I just think Sarukian's on another level. The Silva fight, like you said, is a little bit worrying, but the point is the toughest fight Makhachev's ever had in the UFC is Sarukian. I think Sarukian's going to show you that there's levels to this game. There is nothing I want more than Makhachev Sarukian in Abu Dhabi, October 26th.
That would be great.
That is I've wanted that fight since Sarukian won in December. I thought they should have just gone ahead and booked them two so we could see the fight. I thought that would have been a great UFC 300 co-main or main event. We're probably going to have to wait a while for it.
Ramadan ruined it, though, to be honest.
Who?
Ramadan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the way that, right now they're leaning, I think there's a reason they haven't announced Makhachev's next opponent. As much as Poirier is pining for it, I think they're waiting to see what happens Saturday night. And we'll just have to see what my bold predictions for the weekend are to see who I think Makhachev fights next. But I think Sarukian's clearly gonna define himself as the number one contender on Saturday night.
I think he's the second best in the division right behind Makhachev.
Yeah. I mean, and if I can't wait to see them fight again. I cannot wait to see that fight. I don't even know who would be favored. That could be an even line. As great as Makhachev is, that could be an even line. Those two are ridiculous. And let's get to we got 3 title fights to break down to finish out our predictions, and then we'll finish up with our final thoughts. But the first title fight of the night, the BMF title fight, Justin the Highlight Gaethje versus Max Holloway. This is great. This is nuts. This is nuts. I mean, this is ridiculous. But Tobey, who you got in the BMF title fight?
This might be shocking, but I don't know if you hear it. The dogs are barking again. This is a very close fight, and I'm kind of shocked if you look at Holloway's career, how many people are going with Gaethje. And I will say, Gaethje's looking better than he ever has. He's looking composed. But the main difference, just between just the fighters themselves, take away their history, the power difference. Obviously, Gaethje has the power difference. But the thing that makes me lean Holloway is you look at how Gaethje's performed in his 2 title fights. Not really great performances. He's a very exciting fighter. He's fighting really well right now. Holloway, in 5-round fights, he's been in a lot more of them. 8 of his last 9 fights have been 5-round fights. Most have went the distance. I think he keeps him at range the first couple of rounds. I think the championship rounds are where Holloway steals it. I think the jab, and again, people are counting on Gaethje finishing Holloway, which again, it could happen. Holloway's never been finished, not by a knockout. You know what I mean? So I think Holloway wins by decision. I think it's the fight we all think is going to be. I think it's going to be a war. I think the significant and total strike for each fight is going to be unbelievable. Both faces, battered. But I think Holloway wins by decision. Not a popular pick, but I think he fends him off those first couple of rounds. And another big thing, people aren't thinking Holloway's going to get a finish. While he might not have the most powerful shots till later in the rounds, Gaethje leaves a lot more openings than Holloway does. And while Gaethje will go for the powerful punches, I think just the volume of Holloway could really get it done at the end of the day.
Yeah, you just about took the words right out of my mouth there at the end. Gaethje throws hard. I mean, people say he's the hardest hitting lightweight or the hardest hitting guy in the division. So him fighting a natural 145er is going to help. So he could absolutely put Max's lights out early on in this fight, but people forget Max is not a small guy. I mean, everybody I think is thinking Max is this really small guy that can barely get up to lightweight. Max is not a small guy. Sure, he's small for a lightweight, but he's really not that small, and Max has a chin on him. He can eat a punch. He's going to be able to eat a couple of Gaethje's punches, and I kind of agree with you, Toby. If Max can really piece him together, he's going to land a lot more. He's not going to land as hard as Gaethje is, but he's going to land a lot more. If this fight goes decision, I don't see any world where Gaethje wins this fight, actually. I actually think if this fight somehow goes 5 rounds, then Max Holloway is easily going to win this fight. However, with that being said, I do think Gaethje's going to catch him. I do agree with you, Toby. Gaethje needs to be a lot more... He needs to be a lot smarter. He can't open himself up the way that he does against a lot of his opponents because I think Max Holloway really will piece him up if that's what happens. I don't know if Max can knock him out. I guess we'll see if he can. His Gaethje's got a pretty good chin on him as well. But I think that Gaethje is going to knock him out. So, but again, be looking out for if Max can go the distance. If he can get through 2, maybe he has to get through 3 rounds. I could see Max Holloway winning this fight by decision, but I'm going to go Justin Gaethje by knockout.
Yeah, y'all must have forgot about Justin Gaethje. I agree, Max deserves all the props in the world, but there's one man who stands alone at the top of the list of the most significant strikes absorbed in UFC history. That guy's name is Max Holloway. And I disagree completely. He leaves openings. The reason Volkanovski was able to go from the second fight, which was razor thin, to blowing him out in the third fight is because he chopped Holloway's legs, whichever stance he was in. Gaethje's leg kicks are absolutely ridiculous. That's how he dismantled Ferguson and basically ended his chances and hopes of ever winning a title. I think he batters Max Holloway's legs. I agree. The fight could very well go to a decision. I just don't see a world where Gaethje doesn't win, honestly. I think if it goes to decision, Gaethje wins. I think if the fight ends by finish, Gaethje wins. Gaethje just goes to a different place. I also think, sure, Max could land volume on him. That's great. But for every 4 to 5 strikes that Holloway's going to land, because he'll probably outland him, for every 4 to 5 strikes that he throws, one shot of Gaethje is probably worth 4 strikes of Holloway's, if we're going to be real, damage-wise. And our biggest criteria has got to be damage. I think there's going to be a real difference when Holloway lands. It's going to be Gaethje still plodding forward. When Gaethje lands, Holloway going backwards. And honestly, as impressive as the knockout was over TKZ in August, that fight did give me a little bit of concern because the Korean Zombie was able to find Max. The Korean Zombie was able to hit Max clean. Max leaves a lot of openings. I mean, Max, one fight that's not aging quite as well as of late is that Yair Rodriguez just absolute war. As great as Yair is, the fact that he was absolutely battered by the striking of Yair, when Gaethje hits him in the face, because Gaethje's going to find the face. He finds it on everybody. He finds the chin on everybody. There's something different about when Gaethje hits you. I just don't see a world where that power difference doesn't affect things. There's a clear power difference. If the fight goes to the ground, I mean,
it's not going to the ground.
Gaethje's a D1 wrestler. If for some reason a game plan so happens that Holloway tries to change things up, Gaethje, no match for Gaethje on the ground. Yeah. Even though we don't see it that much, I got Gaethje.
I think I do agree Gaethje's going to win, but I think you're forgetting how good Max Holloway.
He's great. He's great. But
and he's significantly younger than Gaethje too, which is something Yeah, Gaethje is still not. He's not like pushing retirement. I mean, some people think he could retire if he loses. I don't think that's the case. But I mean, he is over the 35-year-old mark. I'm pretty sure. And once anybody under welterweight and under 170 pounds, once they hit 35, I mean, it's almost like you got a different fighter. So you just, I mean, again, I think Gaethje wins, but just don't be surprised if Max goes out there and wins this fight.
1 year ago, he removed half of Fiziv's face with a jab, though.
Some people think that Fiziv won that fight, though.
I know, yeah, but that's one of those fights where you look at the picture of before the fight and after the fight, and Gaethje doesn't look like he took a strike.
Well,
and Fiziv's face looked like he went through a blender, and all Gaethje did was jab.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I mean, he jabbed Fiziv and basically like melted him. I mean, it's just
that's the interesting
he's
to
got
look
real
at.
Power with just a jab.
Because we were talking about, I mean, just talking about last week's card, how interesting UFC judging has been recently. Let's say it's how we expect the first couple of rounds with no finish, and Gaethje has a ton of damage, but the volume, not only in the rounds, but on the scorecard, those last 3 rounds, let's say it's really close. What do they value more? It should be damage, but let's be honest, UFC judges most times don't value what should be valued. So
I think I'm with Tobey. I think they look at stats more than they look at
volume wise. I mean, Holloway. 450 plus. Strikes versus Cater. But again, it'd be shocking if it gets
pocket though. Max Holloway's gonna have to circle, and he's also gonna have to. Max is gonna get chopped. Those legs are gonna get chopped. I think people are forgetting that Gaethje throws a really nasty kick.
Yeah.
And honestly, I could see Gaethje throwing the head kick again that he knocked out Poirier with. I could see him if the fight gets going for a round or two, and he throws a fake punch to disguise a kick coming. I think I'm just saying Holloway has been looking a little bit slower in the past few fights that he's had, and he's also got dominated by Volk 3 times. I mean, I'm just saying, times are changing, and Gaethje, Fiziv and Poirier is far better than Arnold Allen and TKZ as far as the last 2 wins.
That's true.
I'm just saying, and he's done it in brutal fashion, and honestly, how much credit can you give Max for knocking out Korean Zombie, a guy who's, knocked out by just about anything at this point, which is why he retired. Yeah. I don't know. And even he was finding Holloway's chin. So that gives me concern, and I just think the power is going to be too much. But we're finally here. The co-main event, the fight that we've all been waiting for. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. This is, I personally am just going to go out here and say it. I think this is the most underrated fight on the card. I think this is the fight no one's talking about because they find it uninteresting. I think this fight's going to be bananas. I can't wait to watch it. I think it's not only historic, but you've got you can definitively say the top 2 fighters at 115 pounds are fighting one another. And I think that's exciting. I think that's big for the division. It's big for China, big for the UFC. Noah, who you got, Yan Xiaonan or Zhang Weili?
I think that I kind of agree with you. I think it's going to be a really, really fun fight when it's on the feet. But I think Weili takes Yan down with little to no issue, and I think she kind of holds her there. Whether she gets a finish by TKO or just literally just holds her there, I don't know. But, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. For only 115 pounds, I mean, that woman's made of steel. I'm just determined that nobody can land a punch on her that's going to knock her out.
Other than Rose.
Well, that was a kick, not a punch. And so I don't think Jan's throwing kicks, but maybe. I don't know. But, again, I think Weili's going to get her on the ground, and it's going to be kind of wraps at that point. So I've got Weili. I do disagree with you in the sense where I don't think it's going to be a great fight all the way through. I think it'll be really, really good when it stays on the feet, but I really don't think Zhang's going to have a problem getting her to the ground, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, it was kind of hard comparing the fighters because it was kind of back when Nunes was fighting. Weili's not only better than Yan, she is significantly better than any female fighter on the planet. So I think she's better in every aspect. Again, the striking, it will be interesting. I think, here's the thing. Here's the sad thing to me, okay? And this is something that y'all probably weren't thinking about. Jeremiah, probably you were a little bit. I wish this was Tatiana Suarez versus Zhang Weili, because that's the only woman on the planet that I think has a shot versus Weili. Zhang is just, I think Weili's going to get her to the ground so easily. I think it ends, maybe round 2 holds her on the ground. I think it's going to end in ground and pound. I don't really feel like Weili goes for a submission. Now, Yang could catch her. You know, it'll be interesting. But I just think Weili's so just, you know, poised and been here before. I mean, just look at what she did to Lemos. I wouldn't be shocked if this fight was similar, just holding her down for most of the fight, Yang getting back up at the later in the round. I know on the feet it could be close, but I don't see a way that Weili loses this fight.
Yeah, I've got Weili. I think it's going to be closer than people think. Yan Xiaonan has survived on the ground with some killers, most notably Mackenzie Dern. Her problem hasn't been not surviving on the ground. She's actually been chinned. She was embarrassing. She got knocked out by Carla Esparza. So that worries me, but she also starched Andrade last year, you know? So, I mean, she's ups and downs. I've heard she's a very hard worker in the gym. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think it's going to be similar in the fact that we didn't expect Pantoja and Moreno to be an all-time great fight last summer at UFC 290. We expected a really good fight, but we didn't expect like all-time great. I can turn this fight on at any point and be like, wow, that's one of the greatest fights of all time. I don't think this fight's quite at that level, but I think it's going to surprise us. And I think what I'm saying is our expectations are going to be exceeded to the point where we won't mind turning this fight on again to rewatch it. I think it's going to be closer. And I think the China versus China thing is going to be something that adds to the fight. That there's going to be more menace there than I think people think, and I think it's kind of going unspoken and under the radar that this means a lot to both ladies to be the only Chinese champion after this fight. That this would be the only mixed martial arts champion they have in the UFC. That's big stuff.
One thing that does really worry me, because I agree, it has the potential to be a great fight. One thing that worries me, though, is I don't think people, like the majority of people, are interested for this fight. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid that that arena, it's going to be like a concessions break for the arena or a bathroom break. Like I'm afraid it's going to be a lot like 297, where we have a very quiet co-main, and then it kind of sucks out all the energy in the arena for the main event. Now, I do think we've got big enough names in the main event. It's going to come right back. But I do think there's a potential where it's a really good fight, but people just don't care.
People love Weili, though.
She's getting a lot of love. She got a lot of love at the press conference tonight. A lot, because she's now speaking in English. Really? She came out and spoke in English tonight, and I don't know. I'm telling you, this is an under the radar fight. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be the greatest fight on the card, and I wouldn't have been mad if they swapped the order and made it the first title fight in the bout order and put Gaethje Holloway co-main. But I'm excited for it. Yeah, you know, nonetheless. I mean, and maybe that's because we're more hardcore than I think a typical casual would be, who's looking at it like, that's kind of after Gaethje Holloway, we're going to go to this. And I could see why some casuals would say that, but I think it's legit. And I think it's big in the fact that if Weili wins this, you could make a real argument that if Grasso wins her next fight, Weili versus Grasso to make Weili a double champ.
At 300, I'll still say
Weili versus Grasso to make Weili a double. If that was the fight in the co-main event, Weili to become a double champ versus Alexa Grasso, that's an enormous. And honestly,
they were ready for
if
it.
Valentina, I'm just gonna say this: if Valentina's serious that she's not fighting at the Sphere, that she wants to coach the Ultimate Fighter but refuses to fight at the Sphere, I'd say Weili versus Grasso to open up mixed martial arts at the Sphere. Not going to be the first combat event at the Sphere, but it would be the first mixed martial arts event at the Sphere.
Yeah.
Because Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano are going to box there in June. It's going to be awesome. That those two are made for each other. But man, Weili versus Grasso. If Weili puts on a clinic, again, she could get clipped, and we could need a rematch of this fight. I'm with you, Tobey. I want to see Tatiana in there pretty soon, but she's got to figure out not how to go a whole year without getting injured.
All I'm saying is 135, like that aside, but 125 and 115, just take my money. I mean, those divisions are awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I love those divisions.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing, you know, we're complaining over an abundance of riches when we talk about criticizing what could have been the matchup. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is, I mean, we're going to be up till 3 a.m. watching amazing fights on Saturday.
Sleep.
And I might stay up till Sunday night. That's how crazy it's going to be, my guys. But Without further ado, the main event of the evening, Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill versus Alex Poatan Pereira. And don't use an H when you say his name, Tobey, or I will break you. Because that's the wrong way to say it. It's Pereira. Or
Noah too. I mean, it's not Noah.
I have confidence in Noah to be able to say Spanish names. But
Wow. Okay.
What was that supposed to mean?
I just have got knowledge. You've lived longer. You've got more experience in the world. I don't know. Anyway, we need a breakdown. We need a pick. We need to get to our locks and our big predictions for the weekend before people tune out of this. After we've been going for an hour and a half, it's getting late.
I will say one interesting thing to look at outside of the fight itself is.
I just want to say I just asked you for a breakdown of the fight, and you say one interesting thing to look at outside of the fight.
The second time that he said, "Hey, this doesn't involve a fight."
This is worth being said. We have
we
have never seen. I don't want to.
He's trying to get an Instagram.
I don't want to butcher the name now. I don't want to butcher the name now. Okay, all right. We have never seen Poatan. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. We haven't seen Poatan ever fight or frankly ever be emotional whatsoever. We've never seen him in that state. I will say, the way that Jahamal Hill beat his coach and very close phone Glover, I know they want to inflict pain on each other. I just want to see if that factors in at all. It might not, but with how close they are, that could be an interesting storyline heading into it. The fight itself, I think the big key for Pereira is the calf kicks, I mean, they're some of the best in the UFC, and with Hill, could be limited movement. Again, this is really quick to come off as an ACL tear, so it's going to be interesting. But I'm not looking at Hill coming off of an injury. I'm looking at Hill, the fighter, how we've seen him. He's the best light heavyweight in the world. He's faster than Pereira. I think he catches him. I think we're hearing the dogs again. Sweet Dreams Hill is putting Pereira to sleep. I think he gets the KO. I think he's too fast for him. Most people might not see this. I think he looked a little bit slow in that Yuri fight before he got that KO. I think Yuri's winning. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yuri's coming at him like from all these weird angles.
It's just, can Jahamal Hill have that same speed? Hand speed, we know it's still going to be there. But can the calf kicks come out early from Pereira? We know they will, but how many, the volume, how much will it limited Hill's possibly already limited speed? So I think Hill gets the KO. I think it's a great main event. I'm pumped.
Yeah. He's going with Hill. Tobey's going with
the dogs
of dogs.
Are barking.
He is. But so you've got obviously Alex Pereira, but who is I tried to overcompensate for that time.
It worked. You can roll your R's or you can say the R's. You just can't use an H.
There you go. But Alex Pereira is one of the best strikers that I think we've ever seen in the UFC. Sorry, I was taking some sweet dreams right there because I got Jahamal Hill. I way overdid that. But no, I think that Jahamal Hill is. I think he's got a lot more pop than Pereira does. I think Pereira is a more skillful striker, as I said. I just think the pop is there. He says he's not taking this fight to the ground, but he's taking the fight to the ground. I will be shocked if this fight does not go to the ground once. And if it goes to the ground, Jahamal Hill is winning this fight. I don't know if he's going to win it on the ground or if he's just going to hold him down, but Jahamal Hill is a significantly better grappler than Pereira, in my opinion. And so, man, this is a very, very tough fight to predict because I could really see it either way. Either guy could hit him with one big shot and the fight is over, which would be, I think, a perfect way to win 300 no matter who wins. All I'm saying is, Chama, I'm rooting for Poatan, but I'm afraid that Hill's going to take this one.
Yeah, I'm the lone wolf going with the champ. I'm just going to say it. I got Alex Poatan Pereira. He's winning. He's winning this fight. I've got too many questions on the Jahamal Hill side of things. In July of 2023, tears his Achilles. In April of 2024, he's stepping into an octagon with the most lethal killer we've seen in the past decade in the UFC. Whatever you want to say about his deficiencies in how he keeps his hands down, his deficiencies on the ground, when this guy hits you, it's different. I don't know if you guys saw it on Instagram yesterday. He broke Francis Ngannou's punch power record.
Significantly.
Like, he blew it out of the water, and that's just on technique. this guy's legit power. He's gonna be bouncing around, and Hill, I agree. He's a better boxer, but his stance switches are a little bit sloppy. Also, I've heard people saying, his Achilles is good to go. That's great. Is your Achilles ready to be chopped to bits?
Oh yeah, those leg kicks from Pereira.
Pereira, the one thing you have to say about those leg kicks is he throws them without telling you he's throwing them, which there's no tell at all. It just happens. You're kicked by it. Hill's a monster, and I've gone back and forth on this fight all week. It's just, and the one thing I am worried about is that Poatan does leave his hands down a little bit when he's striking, but it's because he's taking it from his hip and he's using it as a hook. I think the power's too much. I also think Hill might. I don't know how after 9 months your Achilles is ready to take kicks from Pereira. I don't know if you're ready for a cage fight that soon. He could completely prove me wrong and put his lights out. But when I go through this fight in my head, I see one person knocking the other out, and I see Pereira putting out Jamal's lights. I think and how is Jamal gonna move around in there? I don't know. He says he's been training. He says he's ready, but actually performing in an athletic event 9 months after tearing your Achilles, it's tough. That's going to be a really big thing to see. Now, if he's in there bobbing and weaving, I just think even if he is, Pereira can destabilize him with the calf kicks. And then I think if it gets into a wild exchange, Pereira puts your lights out. And also, yes, we've seen Pereira starched before, but that's at 185, similar to the thing we were talking about with Sterling earlier. I think he cut way too much weight. Oh yeah. Now that he's got this much weight on, I think he can take a shot. I think he can take a shot and give a shot, and I'm willing to bet that when Pereira gives a shot, one's not coming back so quickly. I've got Pereira by knockout.
Plus, especially in this sport, like we haven't really seen guys just come back this fast, especially in a fight this big. You look at Rakic. I think it's similar or the same injury. It took 2 years off.
Yeah.
To make sure he was like, now again.
Make sure his leg was okay.
I understand it in the sense to where, you don't take your chances, you lose it. He'll need to take the shot as soon as he got it, and, he's feeling good enough to. But can he recover and be back to anywhere close to his former self? It will be interesting to see.
And what was he doing after he got injured? Was he instantly rehabbing it?
It
did not look like it.
Yeah, he did. He did.
If you're going to come back from an Achilles injury 9 months later, the first thing you need to do is start rehabbing when you tear that.
Yeah.
You need to be on that from day one. When did he start training for the fight? Did he really start training 7 weeks ago, or is he kind of getting ready? We don't know. And Pereira's in the gym every day.
Yeah.
I hope you're right.
I think, and I'll just go ahead and say, I'll save it for my bold prediction. I got a bold prediction about what happens next. But without further ado, we got, we got our picks.
A little wrap up, yeah.
We're going to wrap up with a few final thoughts. As we're concluding, who do you guys think comes out of UFC 300? The biggest winner? Who comes out with their future a bit blurry? Maybe the biggest loser. And then what is your unexpected or bold prediction for the event? Just take a few minutes. You can answer all those questions. You can answer one of them, but what are your final thoughts heading into UFC 300? What do you want to leave the viewers with until we see them for our recap video next week?
I would say probably biggest to gain. I think a dominant performance from Arman really puts that picture in your head. That's the fight we want next. That's who can beat Islam next. And then also, because again, you could really say it about anyone with this card. I think if Lopez has a finish, you really think maybe he could be a real contender in this division. I think blurry future. I think the loser of Holloway and Gaethje. I think Gaethje you consider retirement. Yeah. Holloway, do I even move up to this weight class? What do I do? It's kind of interesting. Biggest loser. It's probably going to end up being Holly Holm. She got put in a bad matchup, But, again, she could shock the world. And then most shocking thing that could happen, realistically, because I don't think, these fights are so close, I don't think anything's too crazy. I think the most shocking thing for me will be if Cody knocks out Figueiredo. I think that'd be crazy. That's the only
most shocking thing is if Cody knocks out Figueiredo.
That would be shocking to me, yeah. I'm trying to think.
Do you see the fight ending in any other way other than a knockout?
I just don't see Cody winning.
No, I'm just saying. No, how does the fight end in your opinion?
It ends
in a
I mean, I guess it would end in a knockout.
So,
31.
you
Yeah,
got
I'm
a
just saying
50-50.
I think it could go decision, actually.
that happening. I'm just saying that would probably be the most. Because again, I don't
Those
think
two
like,
guys are gonna throw.
I would think so, but if it goes decision, I'm not surprised either.
I guess honestly,
I'd be a little surprised.
I guess an early knockout from Holloway would be kind of shocking too.
Yeah, that
I
would be.
not expect that.
You got a bold prediction you want to leave us with, like something that you're gonna go out there and say this is happening.
I'm very confident in my Holloway pick. Maybe not decision, but Max Holloway is going to win the fight.
All
That's balls to the wall. That is my big prediction. I think Holloway.
So I think that. So here's what I want to say first before I kind of jump into those questions. Just enjoy UFC 300 because we've never seen something like this before. And people are like, "Where's Conor McGregor?" And like, I get it. You wanted these fights that weren't realistic in the first place, but like, enjoy the fights that are on the card because we're not going to see something else like this for a very long time. And this could be some of the last fights for some of these fighters. I mean, guys like Jim Miller, Holly Holm, maybe Justin Gaethje. Like, some of these guys could set down the gloves in the octagon. We won't ever get to see them fight again. So, just enjoy the fights that we have. And I'll say that the biggest winner of this card is, I think it's got to be Lopez. I think that if he goes out and he really shines against Yusuf, I mean, that's a guy that people are going to be calling for a big top 10, top 5 fight with. Especially if Charles loses to Arman. I mean, I think you can really make the argument. If maybe not Poirier versus Charles, if you don't want to do that, I think you can really make the argument of like Lopez versus Charles. If Lopez goes out and really shines, I think he's got a ton to gain with a win this weekend.
Wait, did you say Diego Lopez?
Yes.
Fighting Charles.
Maybe.
They don't fight in the same weight class, though.
Lightweight?
They're not. Diego's featherweight.
Oh, he is. That was stupid. I just thought Tobey Giuliano.
Okay, all right.
No,
yeah, I was about to say, like,
okay, so
wait a
that
second.
point completely out the window. I had a brain fart. But I still think he's got a lot to gain, especially with that division wide open.
Oh,
Volk's
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
If Holloway gets knocked out, Holloway's going to need to take
Like maybe
some time.
like Diego Arnold Allen in Manchester
It
in
could be.
July.
And that would be a
Or
great
Diego
fight.
Yair would be really exciting.
Ooh.
That'd be a crazy
Yeah, that would be
fight.
good.
We
So
talk about a spear fight too, but
Yeah.
sorry.
So I think he's got the most to gain. Most to lose. I don't know if any of these fighters really have the most to lose. I guess Holloway would have a lot to lose. Holloway and Gaethje, I guess, because, again, this almost feels like a pointless fight for both of them, thinking they could both have an actual title shot if they didn't take it. So I guess I would go with both of them. But, I mean, you're on the biggest card of all time. Everybody here is getting paid a lot of money. I don't really think there are big losers on this card, genuinely. Unless, I guess, if Bo McNichol goes out there and gets knocked out in the first round, that'd be like, Dana White would be the biggest loser of the card. And then I don't remember if you had any other questions, but
if you had a bold prediction,
prediction.
that hasn't been said, but you're gonna stake your claim on as Sunday morning. This is what we're gonna be talking about.
I don't know. I don't know if I have one. I think that I've said everything that needs to be said. I think that Holloway will put up a fight. I'm not going as far as to say he's going to win that fight. But yeah, I don't know if I have a super bold prediction that we haven't already talked about. So
yeah.
I guess one big bold prediction I could have is Holly Holm could contend. I don't think that she's going to win, but it could really be a fight.
Yeah. As far as for what I could see us talking about Sunday morning, Aljamain Sterling in the title picture.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I think if he goes out there and puts on a bit of a show, it's kind of murky, especially let's say Holloway loses. You don't want to put him against Topuria off of a loss. Ortega, the UFC doesn't seem too keen on matching up Ortega in another title fight just after one win. Aljamain Sterling, former champ, UFC wants to go to Spain. It's the perfect matchup for Ilya because he's the type of guy Ilya could put his lights out because of his deficiencies in the striking game. Sterling I could see us saying Sunday, Sterling, title fight?
That'd be a fun fight too.
That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be a fun build. I'd love to see that fight. I think, when we talk about potential for the biggest loser, I think obviously it's Bo Nickel has the potential to be the biggest loser when you're the biggest favorite. Even if he wins in a less than spectacular way, Bo could take a hit to his stock. Imagine if for some reason it goes to decision or to the third round and we see holes in his game against the guy that people are clowning. That could be, that could be worrisome. I'm with you guys on the Arman. I think his stock most likely. We're going to talk most likely. He's probably got the stock that rises the most. If I have to go out on one bold prediction, May 4th, 2024, the main event of UFC Brazil is Alex Poatan Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev for the UFC light heavyweight title.
That would be crazy.
I'm telling you, he's going to put Jamal out quick, and then he's going to get on the mic in the post-fight press conference and say, Magomed, May 4th, we're doing it. 2 7-figure paydays within 4 weeks. You know he's already said he wants to do it. I think he's going to put Jamal out. I think Jamal's confidence that he's displaying right now is because he knows he's got no Achilles to stand on. I think Poatan Pereira is knocking him out, and then he's going to defend his belt in Brazil against the guy everybody says he's going to lose to. And then we're talking about one of the greatest one-year runs in all of combat sports history.
Maybe the greatest. And
that's, at the very least, I think we're talking about Alex Poatan Pereira in the GOAT conversation.
I actually was thinking the same
Sunday.
thing.
Because the run, this would be 3 wins in a new weight class in the span of a year against 3 former UFC champions in a row. Think about this. Since he started fighting Israel Adesanya, Poatan has not fought anyone who has not been a champion. And he's beat Israel, 4 times? He goes to Utah, beats Jan Blachowicz, then he knocks out Yuri. If he knocks out Jamal, that's 3 UFC light heavyweight champs knocked out in a row, double champ status, and he's hinted that maybe he wants Aspinall. I don't know. The possibilities are endless if he puts Jamal's lights out.
Imagine triple champ.
That's what I thought.
He might be the real. He might be the first person who has a real shot.
He has the potential.
I think it depends on who's champion at the time. It really depends on the. But again,
you're telling me you wouldn't pay to watch Poatan versus Aspinall?
No. I definitely would, but I'm just saying, you even think of Poatan versus John Jones. That's.
Oh yeah. I don't think it's actually
it depends
happen,
on who the champ is at the time that he has the fight. But again, if he's just throwing with heavyweights, obviously he has a chance. So
this is a crazy conversation to have, and I love it.
I love it. I do too. But it's been real.
It's time.
It's been great. It's finally here. UFC 300. I think end on echoing what Noah said. Enjoy the card. This is going to be one of the most special cards we ever watch, and I'm going to be interested to see the fallout effects afterwards, because even after UFC 200, you saw so many fans added to the sport, so many people watching pay-per-view, so many people immersing themselves in the sport anew and afresh. And I'm really excited to see how many new fans we get. And I have a feeling that this card's going to get everybody hyped to see the King of Rio in May. Once they enjoy this card so much, everybody's going to be so excited about the UFC that they're going to go ahead and click purchase to see Jose Aldo back in action. Just the impact this is going to have on the sports landscape. It's crazy, and we're blessed to watch it. So, UFC 300, here we come.
We're here?
Yeah.
It'll be crazy.
Let's do it.
Shama time.
Shama.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But that's all we have to add.
Yes, sir.
Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the MMA Group Chat Podcast. We back every week. We'll be here next week to break down the fights. Be sure to subscribe and click the socials in the description to check out some clips and stay up to date. But we're here.
Yeah.
It's time for UFC 300.
Let's go.